Welcome to the kitchen. Today we're going to be making a limey, spicy beef tartare, Mexican style, called Carne Apache. Obviously, beef is the most important ingredient in a beef tartare, and what I'm using here is ribeye because I love the flavor of it, but you've got lots of different options. I always suggest that you grind the meat yourself if you're going to make a beef tartare. This is ribeye, but you could use tenderloin, you could use anything from the New York strip, you could use sirloin. It's absolutely delicious in this kind of a preparation. But if you're going to grind the meat yourself, you need to freeze it partially. So this is 45 minutes on this tray in the freezer, and it really will firm it completely on the outside, but it won't be frozen on the inside. That is important whether you're going to use a food processor like I am, or if you've got a meat grinder. It'll just grind cleaner. So I'm going to put all of this meat now into the food processor, and it's still, you can hear it clunk in there. It doesn't sound like regular beef would because it's frozen on the outside. Now, because of the size of this processor, I can get it all in there. If yours is smaller, then you'll need to do this in batches. And I'm going to pulse it until it gets ground sort of coarsely, pieces smaller than 1/4 of an inch. So that didn't take very long at all, and everything is really nicely evenly chopped, which is what happens if you will partially freeze it. But we'll put it all into this bowl here, and then we've got to talk about the flavorings. Okay, so in the same bowl of the food processor, I'm going to make the 2 main flavorings that are going to go into this. Now, you may think that this dish is somehow a made-up dish and not part of the traditional repertoire, and I'm here to tell you the opposite of that. But you don't find it very often in Mexico unless you hang out at soccer matches. That seems to be where you find it the most. And there will be these guys that are going around with these ice chests that have carne apache in it. And it's made almost exactly the way I'm going to do it, except that they usually put a green chili like a serrano or a jalapeno in there and make it really spicy. And I'm going to use the chipotle chili because I love the flavor of it, but I love the way it makes it look. Okay, so we've got the meat to set aside over here. I am juicing fresh limes. You could almost think of this as a beef ceviche. I've got my last lime here to push through here, using the Mexican lime juicer and crushing the lime, turning it inside out. And that should get us right to 2/3 of a cup there. And I'm going to put that into the food processor along with chili. And this may sound like a lot of chili to you, but it's really not in this particular one. I'm going to put 3 of them in here. If you like it really spicy, you'll want to go to 5 of these. That'll be almost a whole can of them. But I'm going to put 3 in here because I think that that's a nice start. That was only 1/2 of one, and that's another 1/2 of a one there. So we will put the top on, and we're going to run that until the chilies have been completely incorporated. Look at the color of that. It's just so beautiful. I'm going to scrape it now into the meat. And with all of this lime juice that you see here going into it, you could imagine that this is almost like a beef ceviche. In fact, a lot of people would make it that way. They would let the meat marinate with the lime long enough that you would actually cook the meat just the way you cook fish in lime juice when you're making ceviche. I don't like it that way very much because I love beef tartare, but we're just going to mix it in and let it stand for just a few minutes to absorb the seasonings. That's all nicely incorporated. Now, you know, when I said cook, it was like cook with air quotes because it's the lime juice that's actually denaturing the protein the way that heat would, but this doesn't ever go anywhere near the fire. So you can leave it to marinate until it gets that cooked texture to it, or you can do what I do, which is to serve it right away. But not until I've added all of these vegetables in there. I've got to dice some tomato and avocado and red onion and chop up some cilantro for our final little bits. I'm rinsing off this red onion under cold water to take away that strong bite, that stuff that most of us don't like about raw onion. All I have to do is rinse it off like that, and then I shake off the excess water, and then it's going to go right over here. I'm going to combine all the vegetables in this bowl. That other one's not big enough for me to do all of this with, but we'll have the avocado. I like lots of avocado in this. The tomato, and then of course we've got the chopped cilantro. So if you think about sort of classic ceviche, it would have all these same things in it too. So think this is a little bit like a beef ceviche. Now our marinated, I've got cilantro all over my hand there. The marinated chipotle beef with lime. And just mix all of that stuff together, sort of almost like in a folding action here to get all of the vegetables evenly distributed. Okay, everything looks to be evenly distributed now. We have to season this, and it'll surprise you how much salt this will take. It'll take about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm just going to measure that in. But you might want to measure in a teaspoon, taste it, and then just go from there. I thought it would take a teaspoon too, but it really does take a little bit more than that to suit my taste. So we'll stir that. I will give it a taste. Let's see where we are here. That makes me happy. Now I'm going to show you 2 different ways you can serve this. Now if you're going to serve the Carne Apache as a party snack, I suggest you serve it in a small bowl. Maybe keep the rest of it in the refrigerator, but I've nestled this bowl into crushed ice like that so that you can keep this really cold, because I think the Carne Apache is the best when it's super, super cold. And then I like to serve it with chips and let people spoon out a little bit onto the chip. You might want to take a little more cilantro and put that as a garnish on the top, like that, just for beauty's sake. Now let me show you a sort of different way of doing it that's appropriate if you're going to serve this as a first course. I'm going to dress this up a little bit by molding some. This is just a biscuit cutter that I have, but you could use a can, like a tuna can, that works, or if you have special ring molds. But I think people love to have this as a little first course for a really nice meal. So just put it in there. Now you'll need to pack it lightly, just so that it'll hold its shape. And then very gently pull your mold up. And you can actually do this before the party starts. I'm going to take a few chips and just lay them on the side of this. Perhaps doing a little bit of chopped cilantro would be a nice garnish to go over everything, because you can just sprinkle it over everything in the plate as well. And you've got something that looks worthy of a restaurant there. I hope you enjoy this. I tell you, it's probably something that you've never thought of before, never tasted before, but if you haven't, you should.